That's right, Katie. He was contemplating it, according to the New York Times, before Donald Trump had to call him and ask him to stay, which obviously he did agree to because David Schoen was part of the short presentation yesterday. He's not there today because he's observing the Sabbath. And honestly, we're all wondering whether he even has any idea of anything that's going on right now, because it's very possible he has not been clued into or briefed on what is going on here because of that religious observance. Setting that aside, the current Trump legal team, Garrett just presented a great question of whether this caught them by surprise. I can tell you, according to a source close to the group, the answer to that is yes. They were expecting to completely wrap this up today and leave Washington and be done with this, and they were really optimistic that they were going to have an acquittal in hand when they left D.C. This was something that the Trump team was essentially hoping would be wrapped up and done by mid-afternoon. That's obviously not the case. So according to this person, they are huddled right now trying to define their strategy. And of course, you have seen all this bluster about them saying they would be happy to call dozens and dozens of witnesses, knowing first we need an agreement from the Senate on what that even means, how that will happen, what kind of a vote needs to take place for each person that would have to be agreed upon, and all of that. But something really interesting here, Katie, that we're also getting reaction from people in the orbit of the former president, for example, former White House officials who are telling my colleague Kristen Welker, what would that mean for me? Am I somebody who maybe will be called to have to come and testify? And they're a little bit concerned about that. So you have here, of course, multiple layers and a lot to juggle also during this break right now as they're trying to figure out what's next. It's likely that the former president, Donald Trump, is speaking to his team and also trying to discuss what their approach should be next. We know right now, for example, that Donald Trump is at one of his golf courses here in West Palm. We haven't spotted him actually on the course as we do sometimes, so often he's taking in the proceedings just like us, watching this all unfold in real time. And again, there is an absolute element of surprise here. They were expecting this was going to be done. And to the conversation you were having moments ago with Chuck Todd about this defense team, the reason this group of attorneys is much smaller is because they were so optimistic this was going to be a speedy and swift trial and it didn't necessitate more people. If this now stretches on, they may have to bring more people on board. But as we've been reporting here for weeks, they've had a really hard time finding people who are willing to come and work with the former president, since we've already seen so many attorneys essentially say, I can't work with you because I'm not comfortable with the former president's desire to make some of this trial about those bogus voter fraud claims.
And Mon, if this stretches on, there's also another layer to this, too, and that is former President Trump, right? I have talked to sources. I know you've talked to your sources about this. He has been counseled to basically say nothing, stay silent. Yes, we've talked about here with Katie and Stephanie, he doesn't have his Twitter account. That is obviously a big megaphone that he has used, but he has a myriad of other ways to get his message out to people. He has chosen not to do that, again, because we understand he is being counseled not to, that could end up hurting his case. If this trial does go on, let's say another week, let's say another 2 weeks, as it did if you look at the Clinton model, roughly, is it sustainable that Donald Trump stays out of the public spotlight?
I think for him, this is something he's been itching to do, to re-enter the spotlight in some way. And those around him have urged him to really stay out of it as the trial is ongoing. But this is so out of character for Donald Trump, somebody who really likes to seize the limelight. And Hallie, you're right. If this were last year, I would be looking down at my phone every 30 seconds to see if Donald Trump had tweeted some kind of reaction to this news. That's not something we're experiencing this impeachment go around. But he can at any time release a public statement through his official office. He could also always call a press conference at Mar-a-Lago, not too far from where we are here. But he has been told, do not do either of those things and do not derail what the Trump team thinks is an all but assured outcome. Don't step in it, basically, was the message to Donald Trump. And he has so far heeded that advice. But as this continues, he may get a little bit more antsy and want to weigh in. I think what's so striking, and Hallie, you know this so well after covering him for all these years, Katie, you too, obviously, this is someone who loved to call in to friendly media outlets and do interviews and do on-camera appearances. He hasn't done any of that since leaving office last month, which really has been a departure, though we know he's having all of these behind-the-scenes conversations and meetings at Mar-a-Lago with some of his associates to try to discuss next steps as he continues to decide what his political future might be. And as we know, he hasn't ruled out running again in 2024, guys.